Hi, so today what we're going to be doing is checking out whether or not distilled water can destroy a motherboard. Some people have asked me to try with distilled water since I have already tried with regular water and I've tried with Coca-Cola, and they've both had disastrous effects on the board. So we're going to see what happens today when I use distilled water, since a lot of people use this in their water-cooled systems, and see if it has a disastrous effect on the board. Now the circuit that we're going to be looking at today is the circuit that takes charging voltage, that takes the power from the charger and turns that into 12.56 volts for the battery and the machine. Let me just get the PDF queued up here on the screen again. Okay, looks like I can't show you the PDF on the screen today. My software is being screwy. Let's see. Come on, OBS. All right, so I can't show you how the circuit works today because Open Broadcaster's being silly. But this chip over here is what's going to take the 12 volts from the charger. It's going to take the 18 volts from the charger and turn it into 12 volts for the battery in the system. And today I've got some nice, beautiful distilled water over here from the pharmacy. I got myself a clean syringe, and I'm going to be putting this clean syringe in here, getting myself out some distilled water, and putting it on there. Now what I have here is, you can see, I've got my multimeter, so you'll be able to see the voltage in real time. He's ignoring the comments. Indeed he is, because he cannot talk into a camera and read comments at the same time. Very perceptive. So let's take this and get started. So this is the circuit. And get some distilled water in my syringe. It's harder than I thought to get. How do you do this? Oh, it's gonna get some on the floor. That's fine. All right, so we got our chip up here. We got our distilled water. And let's see what it does. So this chip's making our 12.58 volts from the 18.5 volts that we've put in. And here's some distilled water. And wow, it turned off immediately. How do you like that? Immediately. Like, actually no delay. The fan is not spinning. You can hear that. I put my microphone right by the fan. And you can see that the voltage in the circuit is falling in real time. So this is interesting because with the Coca-Cola, when I used Coca-Cola and when I was using regular water, the voltage actually went up. It went from 12.56 volts to 17 volts. So what happened when I poured normal water on Coca-Cola on the circuit is that the charging circuit stopped switching and just stayed on all the time. So it was staying on and just passing direct charger voltage to the system, which actually could be bad. In this circuit, everything there that takes 12 volts can also take 17, so it's not a big deal. But if it was a different circuit, it may be something terrible. But it was actually still able to work. The machine was able to stay on and still function, even though it was getting 17 volts with the Coca-Cola and the standard water. With distilled water, it turned off immediately. Now, the upside to the distilled water is that it doesn't seem like it's shorting any of the connections, because with the standard water and the Coca-Cola, what was happening was that the connections were being bridged. So 16 volts and 17 volts was going where 12 volts was supposed to be. With this, at the very least, the voltage is not going over what it's supposed to be, but it still does have the effect of causing the machine to die. It turned off faster with distilled water than it did with anything else. you should consider using mineral oil, as some channels have been using mineral oil for PCs to see if it does any damage. We could try that next for sure. So it's not 100% distilled water. Are you telling me the pharmacy would lie to me? Hey, check this out. Look up here. Upper right corner, you can see some blue stuff is already starting to appear. And the capacitors are getting corroded already. Ha! Wow. Much corrosion. Much corrosion. Moot says $100 says that it's screwed. Yep. I was surprised. I thought that it would at the very least, last longer than the Coca-Cola. But the board was actually able to last longer with Coca-Cola than it was able to last with this. Wow. Yeah. Jeez. Don't want this stuff dripping on your board. Annex has a few seconds and more viewers than on Jessa. What's Jessa got? What are our differences in view count? 111 on Jessa's stream. Let's see. I've got 7 on Twitch and 361 on YouTube. That's still bad for me. Usually I can get up to 700 or so. I guess this is boring. All right, we're finally starting to get over voltage. The ISL circuit's producing 14.23 volts instead of 12.56. So now it's starting to show the same defects that the Coca-Cola and the water were before. And as we can see, look at the ends of these capacitors. See this? The ends of that capacitor is turning, yeah, it's turning that corroded gray color. And don't get me wrong, it's corroding much slower than the water, and definitely much slower than the Coca-Cola, but still damaging. Paul says good morning. Hello, Paul. I can't be sure if you're the real Paul Daniels because you don't have the kitty as your avatar. If you were the real Paul Daniels, you would have the kitty as your avatar. It's not really distilled anymore. Will get worse as the contaminants dissolve. It is getting worse. You can see that we're up to 15 volts on BP Bus G3 Hot. Moot says Lewis is nicer than Jessa. Indeed, I like to think that I'm nicer than Jessa, and far less judgmental. Okay. 15.2 volts. All right, I want to see if we can get the straight up charger voltage. So I'm putting 18.5 volts into that circuit because that's what the MacBook Pro charger would be putting in. And let's see if the distilled water sits there long enough, if we can get straight up to it just not switching at all and passing 18.5 volts. But yeah, it seems like Coca-Cola is healthier for the board than this. Do you remember how long the board was still working with the Coca-Cola for? A while. The fan was still spinning on the Coca-Cola board for a good 5-10 minutes. Maybe like 5 minutes or so. Yeah, and this one, it died instantly. Wow. I'm glad to know that next time I'm drinking distilled water and spill it on my laptop, it's less likely to kill my board. Who drinks distilled water?
So how bad is it?
The distilled water actually killed it faster than the Coca-Cola.
What?
It took a few minutes for the Coca-Cola to make it not turn on, and the distilled water made it stop turning on immediately.
But do you see like visible corrosion?
That's the thing, the corrosion itself is not as bad. So the corrosion isn't nasty, but it killed the board. Paul Daniels says, you know it's the real me. You taunt me daily for not having a hidden dragon writing magic button in my software to reveal the fault. Mood says, do not drink distilled water. Moot also says, take this lesson from where it comes. Always drink distilled water, so when you spill it, it doesn't kill your board. Huh, which one do you listen to?
Now just drinking distilled water will kill you.
Yeah, this is considerably more boring. All right, so I'm going to wipe off the water and see if we get a recovery. Let's turn off the electricity for a moment. All right, as you can see on my Q-tip here, that's a lot of that's a lot of stuff that's coming off of the board. All the stuff that you can see, the little black and gray bits, that's metal from the components that's gone. All right, so we're going to zoom in a little closer and point out what it did. So let's check out the damage that the distilled water did. So the first bit of damage that it did is you see how these probe points that were not exposed to water are still a healthy metal color, still this healthy shiny metal. Whereas over here, you start to get this rust-looking color, rusted, semi-rusted. Now, also, when it comes to the actual components themselves, if you look over here, the healthy components have nice silver ends. So the ends are all silver. Then you look over here, the ends start to get to be this grayish, blackish color, like there's soot on the end of them. So this is the grayish, and over here it's starting to become a dark gray to black color instead of being silver. So distilled water can really wreak havoc. And some of you may be saying things like, well, Lewis, that's not real distilled water. But if you're doing a water-cooled system and you just buy, what you're probably going to do is something like what I did in 2006 when I set up my first water cooling rig, which is walk to the pharmacy and buy the gallon of $1 or $2 or $3 distilled water that they have there that says distilled on it, and not actually test it for yourself, but trust it because it says distilled, it's distilled. So you can indeed still do some serious damage to your board with distilled water if it manages to get out. Now let's see if it winds up working again since we dried it off. All right, so we're back up to 12 volts. Thank you to 2DFX. Much appreciated. All right. Thank you. This is a fantastic demonstration of how to identify liquid damage. We try. Lesson learned, the healthiest thing to drink on for your MacBook is plain old tap water. Okay, so the fan's back to spinning again. So now we're going to drop some more distilled water on there and torture it. That's one drop. Literally one drop. One drop with this tiny needle was all it took. And it's done. No more fan spinning. Hear that? See, hear that? That's the sound of a fan that's no longer spinning. So it's still creating PP Bus G3 hot, but this is all it took. Look at that. This tiny needle. The water drop has barely made its way to the board. So I will say that while the Coca-Cola definitely had a more devastating effect on the board, in terms of function, it actually functioned much longer with standard water or Coca-Cola than distilled water. Distilled water instantly killed it. It took nothing. Let's see if we can get it to turn on again now. How is this different than when other than the power is on than your use of distilled water and cleaner in the ultrasonic? Well, the difference is really about electricity going through it. And once we put it in the ultrasonic, when we're done with the ultrasonic, what we do is we put alcohol, we dip the entire board in an alcohol bath to displace all of the water, and then it gets put in an oven at 250 Fahrenheit for about an hour to get rid of any of the liquid that's in there before we turn it on again or apply power. And we're down at 2 volts. Let's see if we turn the machine, we're going to turn the power off, turn it back on. We're back up. All right, try it again. That's not enough. Not yet. Still turned on. That looks really cool. I like the microscope ring appearing. When you ultrasonic a board, how long and what temperature? Usually 60 Celsius for a minute per side. If it's really nasty, or I have reason to believe that there's corrosion underneath a BGA chipset, and it's dead. The moment it touches the board, it's dead. If I have reason to believe corrosion under a BGA chipset, then I will run it at 80 Celsius, but for less time, maybe like 30 seconds aside. Yeah, it's the moment that touches the board, it's done for. Penty says distilled water is not distilled after you mix it with the hair, sperm, and spider droppings on the board. I suppose. Multimeter test the water. Proper distilled is infinite ohms. How am I going to multimeter test water? Apple is crying as they are watching this. No. Okay, fine. We'll multimeter test the water. Let's get the board out of the way. And we're going to unplug these current probes that are in there and plug in my other probes. And we're going to put some distilled water on my sheet and go from there. I suppose I should first measure my sheet to make sure that my sheet doesn't conduct electricity. It's my little desk sheet. So we're going to put this back into ohms mode. Okay, so before we do it with water, let's just make sure that my workspace is not conductive. Okay, workspace, millions of ohms. All right, now we're going to put some water. All right, that's a drop of water from my little. That's a new syringe, by the way. 3.4 million ohms. 3.1 million ohms. Let's see if I get closer. If I move the probes closer together, does the resistance go down? Yeah, if I move the probes closer together, the resistance goes down to 1.6 million ohms. Let's see, how close, if I get the probes really close together. Okay, if I get the probes really close together, yeah, it's still 1.8 million. The distance doesn't seem to make a difference. Let's zoom in on that so you can get a better idea. All right. Still looks like 2.7 million ohms. The multimeter software is not reading that, but that's because the multimeter software is dumb. This is really terrible multimeter software. I really got to figure out how to use Paul Daniels's. I have to figure out how to use Paul Daniels' stuff. It's much better than this. Can I get your best? Hey, I'm walking here. Sorry, I don't have much of a New York accent. I spent a lot of time after moving out of Staten Island trying to shake away the Staten Island accent. So I don't think I'd be able to do a good one. The water will pick up anything soluble it comes into contact with and start to lose resistance. So I think that I would suppose that would kill this because it's going to pick up stuff on the board, isn't it? Last week I read that Apple patented water-resistant keyboard. Really? Like 20 years after ThinkPads? I think it was dust-resistant, not spill-resistant. Yeah, so it looks like we're getting a steady 3.2 million ohms on that water. Should we compare this to tap water's resistance? Let's see what we get with tap water, actually. Here, I'll clean this off. I already updated Open Broadcaster, Paul. All right. Thank you to Jason Barney. Okay, our electric vibrations on MacBook case is normal. I never get that. I mean, I suppose maybe if you're shocking yourself, it's from short circuits. Error with intermittent power issues, which I fixed repairing a flat trace. Today I came in, was totally dead. PM sleep, S3L missing, struggling to find cause. I think the last time I had that, it was tin whiskers on a spot of the board. I've had tin whiskers on a transistor for that before. All right, so I just poured some regular tap water on my desk, and let's see what the resistance is of that. Yeah, this is my tap water over here. Ready? All right, the tap water resistance is 250 kiloohms, whereas the distilled water resistance was 3 million ohms. So you do get a lot higher resistance. And again, the multimeter software is being dumb. It's showing you 5.5 million ohms. That's not even close. That's not even close. It's actually, no, now it's getting close. It's going up very quickly. So the resistance is now 1.2 million, 1.2, 1.1. Let's see if I move them closer together. Distance doesn't seem to have any effect on it. When are you going to do an extra Jägermeister repair? I've quit drinking, so. This is. All right, so that's about it for this stream. So, imagine that. Distilled water actually kills the board faster than Coca-Cola. Less physical damage, but more immediate damage. Honestly, was not expecting that. I was not expecting there to be any damage at all, which means that Moot wins the bet. So that's it for today, and as always, I hope you learned something.